We're headed over to Scuppernong Books to have a conversation with Billy Ingram. He's a writer for O. Henry magazine and author of Hamburger Square. In fact, in that book, he talks about the very history of this building.
O. Henry asked me, like, what do you want to write about? And I said, well, I'd like to take a block downtown. I'd like to take the 300 block, one side of the 300 block of South Elm, which had been deserted up until just a few years earlier. And Scuppernong came in and took the old Greensboro Record Center space that had been empty since well, I came in this space when it was deserted, and there were Sheena Easton posters on the wall and Kenny Rogers posters on the wall. So that will tell you when the place closed. You know, it was like 84 or something. And it had been empty ever since then. So yeah, and now all of these spaces are slowly being renovated and occupied. But even when I was writing the article in 2014, it was just coming back to life, this block, and I just found the idea of it fascinating. Constructed, well, I was talking about this building here. Constructed just prior to the turn of the last century, 304 South Elm was named for contractor W.C. Bain. He was responsible for Greensboro's more elaborate center city retail hubs. The top two floors, accentuated by large arch windows, sculpted terracotta overlays, was where dentist Dr. Walter Hartzell and barber George Slate drilled and chilled throughout the 1930s and 40s. In the 50s, J. Lee Stone photographed bridal and baby portraits in his spacious studios just up above us. The inviting storefront below features 3 dramatic glass showcases and transoms, all framed with impressive cast iron columns. By far, the Bain building's most soulful resident was the Greensboro Record Center. From the go-go 60s into the 80s, a musical epicenter with one of the largest selections of oldies 45s imaginable. They were just stacks and stacks. Any 45 you wanted, going back to the 40s, was right here. City Councilwoman Nancy Hoffman rescued this derelict in 2013, undertaking a complete overhaul, restoring the handsome neoclassical metalwork and simple wooden door frames. Is once again an entertainment destination. Scuppernong Books, a relaxing wine bar, bookstore. Owner Brian Lamp can explain why here and now. Largely it was missing in our lives. What do we want or expect from a city that wasn't here? Bookstores have been the center of information, of friendship, of great personal value. And we knew we weren't alone. There was a guy who was 11 years old sweeping floors here in the 1930s, and now he comes in, he's in his late 80s and reminisces with us. I guess it was his grandfather's store.
We're going to talk about growing up in Greensboro.
Okay.
For you, I know you wrote a very compelling article, which was actually in your book, which was Hamburger Square.
Yeah, actually, I wrote it for O. Henry, and then when I finish an article, I'll just throw it in my book and then run it back out.
So O. Henry originally, and then you...
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it was a strange thing because you know, it was about growing up in Greensboro on Hill Street, and I was at the meeting in let's see, it was in October, end of October, at O. Henry. And Jim Dodson, who's the main editor, said, just in general, I'd like to see more articles that are more personal, that come from your life. And I also like to see maybe, if you guys who's talking to the writers in general, just pick a street and maybe write about it, the street, you know. I thought, okay, well. So I went home and I don't know why, I just felt compelled, like everything that I write, I just feel compelled to do it. And so I said, I'm going to give myself 3 weeks to write this. So, because it wasn't asked for. I've been given an assignment, which was to write about things that originated out of Greensboro, things or people that originated out of Greensboro. That's what I was supposed to write. So I sit down and I write this article about growing up on Hill Street. And I really enjoyed doing it. And I turned it in, and Nancy Oakley, she says, well, this is great, but are you going to do the article that you're supposed to do? You know, it's like, yeah, I'm going to get on that right now. You know, I'm going to do that. And I was surprised when they scheduled it for February, because this was December, I guess, and they'd already, the February issue was already booked. And this was an article, really, because it was, you know, dealt with the snow events also in the 1960s. And you can't run that in July, you know, you can't even run it in March, because it's too warm here in March.
So it fit.
So it did, but it wasn't scheduled for that. I was really surprised, because I thought that they probably just schedule it for next year, next January or next December. because but they put it, right in, and I was really surprised that they did that.
Cool. I'm kind of picturing this. I don't want to say almost Dennis the Menace character with the notebook and taking your early writing days.
Yeah, I just found some of I did a weekly newsletter in the neighborhood, and I would pepper my mom and dad with, for stories about the neighbors, after they've had a couple of drinks. And I just found a bunch of those the other day, and it was really a bunch of my dad taking a bunch of corny jokes and putting the neighbors' names in it, and I would go around and sell subscriptions, but I could only sell 7. Because what I had to do, it was carbon paper. So I had an original, 3 sheets of carbon paper, so 4 sheets. So I would type it out, and so I had 4 copies, plus the original. Then I'd have to do it again, and type the whole thing all over again to get 4 more copies. So I only could have 7 subscribers, and I kept a copy myself.
That's fascinating. And of course, this was on a typewriter.
This is on a typewriter. So even to this day, I had an old 1920s Underwood, and I would bang, 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 bang. I could type with 2 fingers, 1 finger really, bang, 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 because you had to type hard to get through the carbon paper, so that last copy would have some ink on it, for want of a better term. And so to this day, I type like this, bang, 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 bang. A friend of mine accused me. He said, "You're just typing loud to be demonstrative. You're just like trying to get attention for yourself by typing that loud." I go, "No, that's how I learned to type. I had to type really hard on that Underwood."
When did you really start getting into your writing?
Well, in 1980, I went to work for a magazine called Data Boy in Los Angeles. It was a gay magazine. It was a gay. It came out every other week, and they distributed it in the bars and that type of thing. It was an advertising rag. It was just a terrible. And all they would do was print just press releases, and they had some regular articles and everything. And I thought, well, I've always wanted to write a regular article. What can I write about? What do I know about? All I know about it maybe is comic books. And I was hanging out in the punk rock scene, and I thought, well, I'll write about punk rock. I mean, you couldn't have picked a subject that gay people would be less interested in 1980, in the days of the Weather Girls and all that, it's raining men and all that crap. So I started doing that, and I didn't realize that I had built up a following. I left the magazine, but I was still writing the column for about a year and a half, and I didn't realize that I had a readership of about 50,000 people with a tight demographic. And that people, even though I wasn't there at the magazine to receive it, companies were sending their records and press releases and everything to the magazine. And although I wasn't getting them because they didn't care, they did not care about the content of the magazine at all. All they cared about was, we're selling ads. This is how many ads we have. This is how many pages we have to do. We just got to fill the text. So I'd turn in my articles, and the text would go up to there, and then they just cut the rest of it off, and they just throw out the back part of the article,
So the content itself
they did not care. And they didn't read it, in fact. And the publisher was this really uptight Christian people. And they would see my article where I'd use the F word or the S word, and I'd be insulting the magazine and insulting the editors and everything. And they'd come back to me and go, "What is this, Billy? What is it?" After it was printed. Why did you say this? You're making fun of our advertisers and everything. I'm like, read it before it goes in the magazine? Whatever.
It reminds me of like the Wayne's World, where they're...
It was very much like that. It was just catch as catch can. But I was covering a scene that nobody else was, well, LA Weekly was, but really nobody was covering the downtown LA scene. Downtown LA at that time, people don't realize now, of course, downtown LA, if you think about it. But at that time, they were selling space in downtown LA for 50 cents a square foot, and nobody wanted to be downtown. Nobody wanted to be downtown. People were just breaking into warehouses and bringing a generator and DJ equipment and throwing a club. So it was a really ragtag kind of thing. But out of that, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Jane's Addiction, TSOL, the Minutemen, I love the Minutemen, Social D, all of these groups, were playing to 40, 50 people. It was very exciting.
If I could, I'd play them all.
Yeah,
but we can't.
Let's roll that footage right now.
But we really can't.
Let's don't.
But the movie poster work must have been some interesting stuff. I'm sure you got
it was. I fell into that too. I had no training as an artist. I had Miss Bell's art class at Page High School, and that was really all the art training I had. And lo and behold, being a movie poster artist at that time turned out to be just like that. This was a time, I came in 1985, I think it was. And before, say, 1983 or so, you could not use a photograph on a movie poster. We didn't have the technology to blow up a photograph that big. So all movie posters were illustrated. I'm not a great illustrator. Now, when it became feasible to do photographs, artists like myself were brought in to do comps where we manipulate photographs and we paint over them and do whatever because we had to create comps of 9 by 12 that looked like a printed poster because the people at the studios were so stupid they couldn't visualize. So we would do it looked like it was a finished printed poster. And I don't know where I got the chutzpah or whatever you call it to think that I could do that, but I just fell into it and I just found myself in an environment that my hands had to be Photoshop. We didn't have Photoshop. So my hands had everything you do in Photoshop today, we had to do with our hands. And then, the mid-90s, 94, we started moving over to Photoshop. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to sit in front of a computer all day. I'm just not going to do that. So I'm going to leave this now. I've always wanted to be, I want to be a writer now. I've done the artist thing. I want to be a writer. So I'm going to move back to North Carolina. I'm going to move back to Greensboro because I know I'm going to be broke. And you can't be broke in Los Angeles. I could not walk away from the money, and I could not walk away from the lifestyle. So I said, I'm going to be, go back to Greensboro and do that. And lo and behold, someone showed me the internet. And I said, oh man, that's going to be the next big thing. That is going to be the entertainment platform of the future. I've got to get up on this thing. So I got a computer, and lo and behold, I was 16 hours a day on the computer. I had to learn how to write HTML myself because there were no programs to make web pages. So I would look at download the page, the text behind the scenes. I can't even think now. And I'd look at it and go, okay, IMGSCR equals. Okay, well that probably means image source. And that's probably a folder. So let me put an image in a folder and let me see if that works and figure it out that way.
And you had to be super organized about it too.
Yeah, well at that time I was dreaming in HTML tags actually. It was just taking over my life. And I had all this content and this knowledge about classic television, and there was no content about classic television on the internet. So I actually became the very first person. You know how you go to a web page and you see pictures, you see the text, and then you have an embedded video there. I was actually the very first person to do that, just because I had the content and and wasn't afraid of being sued because I didn't have anything, so it didn't matter. It was funny. I was working one Saturday morning. I get a phone call. And I go, hello? He goes, yes, is this TV Party? I go, yeah, I do TV Party. He goes, oh, I see you have clips from Sonny and Cher on your website, and Red Fox show on your website, and this show on your website. And he says, yeah, and I said, yeah. He goes, well, I own the rights to all of those shows. And I go, really? That's awesome. You own the rights to Sonny and Cher and all this stuff? And we had a conversation and everything. He goes, I called to tell, I was going to shut you down. I was going to shut you down hard. And I was going to sue the pants off of you. But I can see you do this out of love, and I'm going to go ahead and let you slide on this. And it was Paul Brownstein, great guy, very forward-thinking guy, because there was no value in Sonny and Cher in 1995. No value in Red Fox. Nobody remembered these people. And I was, sort of bringing it back to the people. And it became one of the first internet sensations. I was millions of people flowing into this website. It was costing me $1,200 a month because there was no way to monetize it. There was no way to monetize it on the internet before about 2000.
Advertising hadn't
There was
taken over.
Nobody wanted to be on the internet. Nobody knew what the internet was. Most people didn't know what. But you had these millions of people coming in, and it was costing me a fortune. So it was kind of a lost leader. But I then formed a company just loosely and was doing websites for 107.5 and two guys named Chris and Murphy in the Morning Show and that type of thing, UNCG and other clients. So it was because of that they saw that I could do it. Because companies were coming to me and they were going, okay, we spent 6 months with this company, we spent $50,000 to do a website, and we have nothing to show for it. Companies would just take people's money and say, okay, we're going to do your website, and then string them along for a bunch of months until they got sick and tired of it, and they would walk away. And they walked away with the money. And then we had to do it for cheap because they'd already spent their budget.
And is TV Party still going on?
It is still going on, yes. TVparty.com is still there.
And it's almost like the early, I want to say like the early Netflix or the early...
Yeah, they called it YouTube before YouTube.
YouTube before YouTube.
Because I realized right around 1999 or so that one day somebody's going to create a website where people can just, because people would send me videotapes, and then I would encode the videotapes, and really you could only do about a 5 or 10 minute clip. And I said, someday somebody's going to open a platform where people could just submit the videos and people have the editing software on their own computers. So I made it more about the writing than about the clips. I haven't added a video clip to, there's probably 3,500 video clips on TV Party, which at the time was considered a lot.
And most of them were older shows?
Oh yeah, all old and obscure shows that weren't on the air anymore.
So it's almost like the early antenna TV as well.
Yeah,
what people know of as...
Yeah, because if you wanted to see a clip from Sonny and Cher, you wanted to see a clip from Route 66 or any of the old shows, you really had to go to TV Party because there wasn't... TV Land was around. No, that TV Land had just started really in the mid-90s. So there wasn't that outlet. You didn't have all these channels that you do now.
And then that's where the book came out from.
Yeah,
TV Party.
oh God, that was a really strange thing. So 2001, I realized that I was spending so much of my time dealing with all these clients doing web. I said, the idea was I wanted to be a writer, not be dealing with clients all day and dealing with their websites. So I fired all my clients and I moved to London because I had an opportunity to go there, and it was going to be very inexpensive to live there. It was even less expensive to live there than it was here in Greensboro. Believe it or not, it's like the second most expensive city in the world. But we had this really cheap flat. So I just moved to London. And you have to be out of the country in 6 months. Now, TV Party was making, I was one of the first people to set up a scheme where you could pay for content, where you could pay $5 and then you could have all the content on the website, and then I had the free content. So I was making about $40 a day, 56, depended, some days $5, some days nothing. Well, it was coming up on 6 months, and I had to be out of the country. I didn't have any money. And TV Party was costing me $1,200 a month, and I had a $1,200 bill coming up, and I was going to lose the website. But every night I would go to bed and I would visualize that a publisher would call me, offer me a book deal, give me a big advance, let me do the book my way, so I turn it in camera ready, so I could do it any way I want to do it and won't be bothered by an editor except for a copy editor, and then send me out on a book tour. Now, every night I would go to bed and I would visualize this. Well, one day I got a phone call from a publisher in Los Angeles. Offered me, wanted to do a book based on the website. He says, how much do you want to do it? I said, well, I want a $30,000 advance. He said, I'll give you $20,000 advance. I'll give you $30,000 on the next one. I said, okay, I'm broke. I'm going to lose the website soon, which would make the book deal completely void. He says, I'm going to be in town next week at the book show in London. Can we meet? I said, sure. We met. 5 minutes after we met, he put a check for $10,000 in my pocket to start, and then $10,000 on completion. And so I was able to leave the country, go to spend a couple of weeks out, and then come back, write the book, finish the book, get the money to come back to Greensboro, and then go out on a book tour, of all things. I mean, it literally was a dream come true.
And these were a collection of stories.
Yeah, from the website, and also stories that I did specifically for the book. It was a real grind to do it. I mean, to finish that book, because there's 350 pictures, I think, in that book. It's been so long since I did it.
Tell me about one of your favorite things about writing.
Oh man, just when you get in the zone, and when you've got the thing about 3/4 of the way done, and you've got the structure. And now it's time to finish it, and when I'm in the zone, it's the happiest that I could possibly be. I wrote 3 articles between Halloween and New Year's Day, which for me is a lot, because the first article I wrote for O. Henry took me 3 months. The second thing that I wrote took me 6 months, but mostly because they were so research intensive. What I write is so research intensive that I'll spend weeks research. I'm working on an article right now for Yes Weekly. I've spent a month working full time on this thing. Now I'm going to make about $1.50 an hour on this piece, but I want it to be right. I don't care. As a commercial artist, it's really stupid. You should not do this as a commercial artist. You should not do that. If someone's going to pay you, say, $300 for an article, then spend 30 hours on it, make $10 an hour, and that's respectable. It's not great, but I can't do that. It has to be. I don't even know how to explain it, but when I was a visual artist, I knew when something was finished. And, you knew, because, okay, Arnold Schwarzenegger, there's Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's supposed to be carrying an AK-47, okay, and there's a Predator behind him, okay, it's done, right? That's what you wanted, that's what it is. But as a writer, it's inside of you when it's done. And I just don't know how to hack it out. I don't know how to just just write the thing and just, you know, do it.
The words, the sentences,
Just do it.
the flow.
I mean, the idea I was given was, would you write about this building? That was, and here I am a month into it, you know. Now, the easy thing to do is just write the history of the building and don't, you know, don't try to make some big deal out of it. I mean, don't try to do something different, but I'm actually trying to go back in time and recreate what it was like in 1896 in Greensboro. So, you know, I not only have to research the events, I also have to research, you know, how did people speak back then? What was the language like? What were words? You know, what were the words that people used? So that, you know.
I like this, and you came upon, this just came out, Hamburger Square,
yeah,
where you researched a whole bunch of history in Greensboro.
Yeah.
And then of course, you threw in some TV characters and some film type stuff in there.
Well, that's what I do. So.
Yeah, that is what you do, so that was kind of cool. I love this, since you talked about change in Greensboro. You said, according to Greensboro's first property census, the first shopping district consisted of 5 stores, 3 retail liquor stores, and a stud horse.
Yes, that was the original downtown Greensboro.
And it's amazing what it's become now.
It's not much more, but it's a little bit more. Yeah, it is. Well, we were just talking, you know, Greensboro, when I was growing up, downtown Greensboro was much, much bigger than it is today. We had 2 giant hotels, 2 hotels, you know, 12, 15-story hotels. We had hotels all downtown in Hamburger Square. I think there were 5 or 6 hotels at Hamburger Square. And a lot of it was wiped away to do, say, the Bishop Block, where I used to do the grocery shopping for my family and take my grandmother to the beauty salon, and I used to buy comic books at the drugstore. There is now VF's, that's where the VF headquarters are. So all of this, especially down North Elm, was all wiped away. It was 3- and 4-story buildings and businesses and places to live and homes, and all of that was wiped away. It's much, much smaller now.
And that's when the textile industry is all...
Yeah, when all the industry started dying in the 1970s. Downtown died because they opened the mall, Friendly Shopping Center, and then when they opened the Four Seasons Mall, that was it for downtown. So the city leaders thought, what a great idea. Let's take the parking out of downtown LA and let's put trees down there. We'll make it like a mall experience. It's what it is now, big, wide sidewalks. Because it used to be the narrow sidewalks, and you have cars parked parallel to one another. And they built a big parking structure downtown, so people could park in the parking structure and then walk downtown, and it's like a mall-like experience. So they still had department stores downtown and clothing stores and shoe stores. Well, a lady by the name of Amy Hitchcock, when they first opened this parking lot, she was mugged and shot. And when that made the news, that just killed downtown. Because people didn't want to go to the parking structure now because it was dangerous. And you could barely park on the street. Certainly didn't have enough parking spaces to support a department store. And downtown died. I mean, it just died, and nobody wanted to be downtown.
Because it shifted.
Yeah, entirely. Everybody wanted to be at the mall. Everybody wanted to go to the mall or Friendly Shopping Center where you could park in front of the store. And you couldn't park in front of the stores downtown anymore. And it died in a very short period of time, very few years. And downtown was just deserted by the mid-70s, virtually deserted by the mid-70s. And by the 80s, completely, you know, nobody was down here. These buildings were urinal cakes for the homeless. That's all they were.
Talking about Hamburger Square, for those of us that don't know or weren't around at that time, tell us about Hamburger Square.
Well, I wasn't around that time either, but yeah, okay. Well, back in 1934, the Contoulis family, where Natty Green's is now, opened California Sandwich Shop. Across the street, another Greek family opened Jim's Lunch. And they were always in competition for who had the best hot dog. And so the area became known as Hamburger Square, which makes no sense. That's not a mistake. I don't know why they could do, you know. But there were a lot of restaurants, right? There was Princess Cafe further up South Elm. There were a bunch of restaurants downtown where you could just go and get a burger, fries, and, you know.
It's a community gathering place.
Yeah, it was. And at one time we had 75 restaurants. Downtown Greensboro alone, 75 restaurants, almost every single one of them owned by Greek immigrants. So that's one of the untold stories of Greensboro. Well, I told this story, it's not untold anymore.
What was one of the most fascinating things you learned in creating that book?
I was surprised by the fact that that I was that interested in the history of Greensboro and that I found it so fascinating. It was something that my parents, my grandparents were very much involved in Greensboro in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And my mom was all about old Greensboro. She loved O. Henry magazine when it first came out. And she died about 6 months after the magazine came out, but I would get the new issue for her, and she just loved it. She just absolutely loved it. So she would have loved the fact that I'm actually writing about Greensboro and writing for O. Henry, because she was just all about, she was OG, she was original Greensboro, you know. She and her friends just, you know, they were all up into the history of, and how ironic that I'll spend hours and hours researching something that if my mom were alive, I could just call her up and go, hey Mom, what was this, you know.
You researched and you cited Greensboro fire history, which has a very rich history.
Again, going back to Greensboro being deserted, so you had these old buildings that were built in the 1890s and 1920s that were just sitting around and they were rotting, and they're all wood on the inside. And you would have bums that would be camping out in these buildings, and they'd make a fire, and suddenly, you know, if you go down Davie Street, people don't realize that Davie Street had as much of a downtown as Elm Street. It was just as built up. Now it's just parking lots and flat spaces, and that was because the fires ate all of those buildings up down there. At one time, we had a fire so big in the mid-'80s on Davie Street that the fire department was prepared to pull back to the Carolina Theater and allow all of Elm Street to go up in flames, because they didn't think they were going to be able to contain it. They did, miraculously, because we have one of the finest fire departments in the world right here in Greensboro, and we're very lucky to have that. And it's the only reason why we have a downtown today in Greensboro. It was because of the bravery and the hard work of those firefighters who saved this city. I mean, could you imagine Greensboro now if we didn't have Hamburger Square, if we didn't have Scuppernong Books, all of this was going to be gone. So we were very lucky. And so I think that's what I found most fascinating about it, is how close we came to losing it all.
And you also cited Moon Warwick.
Yes, Moon Warwick.
Progressive chief.
Yes, he was. He was a real by-the-book tactician, and he was known all over the country. You know, he would appear in ads for the the air packs, the airsoft air packs, I think they're called, that firefighters wear. And he was, yes, he was one of the very first professional firefighters that was hired by the city, because it was volunteer before that. I forget the year, but it was the 1920s, I think. And he was one of the very first that was hired. He was in that first class. And he was a big figure in Greensboro in the 1940s, 1950s, up to 1969 when he retired. He was Greensboro's Santa Claus. If you went to the downtown parade, he was Santa Claus on the final float that came through. He was Greensboro's Santa Claus. And then behind him would be the Moonmobile, Moon Wyrick's car, which was all tricked out. He was the one who instituted that the cars would all have radios so they could talk to one another. You know, he wasn't the first in the country, but he instituted all of those modern upgrades.
And one of the other things that you highlighted is that you did this book entirely, everything in this book.
Everything, yeah.
The pictures.
Everything.
That front picture, actually, you ran down and had to take this.
Yeah, I got up, I said, well, I need a picture of downtown. So I got up early one morning with the sun, and the sun's coming up, and the sun's coming up a little faster than I was walking. I only lived 2 blocks from here. So I ran downtown. And I just happened to catch it on a good day, on a clear day, when the sun was just painting everything orange, and just snapped it with my iPhone, and now I had to cover the book. It took just a few minutes.
And it's amazing the technology we have.
I know,
we can
isn't
just
it?
do that with these little devices.
It's crazy. The telephone has taken the place of 15 or 20 different devices. You don't need a flashlight, you don't need an alarm clock, you don't need a television even. I watch Netflix on it.